Hey, beautiful. This is your intuitive consultant and life coach, Avalaura, with another edition of Avalaura Heal My Life podcast. Listen in each week because I'm helping you to heal your life, heal your relationships, learn how to do meaningful work in the world, and make an impact that creates legacy. So go ahead and get your pen and paper, get your favorite drink, and listen in now.
This episode of Avalaura Heal My Life is sponsored by Canada's #1 inspiration coach, Maureen Cayley-Verdonk, affectionately known as Coach Mo. She is the founder of Inspired Living Life Coaching, and Coach Mo is passionately helping women say yes to ourselves and experience more success and joy in our lives. Visit Coach Mo at www.mocaleywerdonk.com. That's M-O Callie, C-A-L-E-Y, Verdonk, V-E-R-D-O-N-K, mocaleywerdonk.com, and claim your free audio CD today.
Greetings, beautiful ones. This is Avalaura, your intuitive consultant and life coach, here with another amazing episode of Avalaura Heals Radio. Tune in each week to learn how to heal from whole to wholeness in your life and your relationships, your business, and your career. And ladies, this is another powerful show just for you. Men, you will certainly benefit, but we're really talking to the ladies today. And I'm so excited about our guest. We're going to be talking all about relationships and how to heal your relationships. But I'm really excited about our guest today. We actually spoke at a retreat together here in the Maryland, D.C. area. I was talking about self-care and meditation, and he just did a powerful speech on all about relationships. And it was a women's retreat. He was the only man, and he definitely held his own. So you are certainly going to be blessed with some phenomenal information today. So as always, you want to get out that pen and paper. If you're just listening in and you don't have a chance to grab that, you're definitely going to want to listen back because I know you are going to get some amazing information that you are going to want to write down, make a note, and implement. So our guest today is the phenomenal Rodney E. Gray. He is a life, leadership, and relationship coach, and he is also a minister and a motivational teacher. So like I said, we just have a powerhouse today. So he's going to tell you a little bit more about himself and all that he does. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Rodney Gray. Hey, Rodney, how are you doing today?
Hey. I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you so much for that gracious introduction, man. Such a pleasure to meet you and break bread with you. And I tell you what, man, it was a great time sharing the stage with you at the retreat. And I'm just excited to be a guest on the show today. You know, I am, I've been around the block a little bit. You know, I've been in the military and been a fireman and pastored a church. And one of the things I learned in all of my doings and everywhere I went is just how important relationships are. Just how important relationships are. And I know I've had my share of headaches and heartbreaks. And so just a couple of years ago, I just decided to do some self-inventory and just kind of take some stock in who I was and what I wanted out of life and what was the meaning and purpose of everything that I had been through. And that's how I came to the point of kind of honing in on relationships and what they meant and what I wanted. And I'm just so excited about everything that I've learned and had the ability to share over the years. And I'm just excited to be able to bring a little bit of that to the table for your listeners today.
Awesome. And I love what you just said, that you took personal inventory. Woo!
Yes.
That is so key, and particularly when we're talking about relationships, because, one of the things that I certainly know for sure is that it's very difficult to have a healthy relationship when you don't know who you are and you don't know your purpose in the world.
Absolutely.
So I love that you said that, and you're absolutely right, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about relationships today, and definitely get a perspective of a man, because I definitely work with the majority of my clients are women, and I work with a lot of women, and what's so interesting is that I would say probably maybe 60% of the women who come to me, it is actually on the verge of a breakup.
Wow.
Yeah, they got a divorce, they broke up with their boo, whatever, and they're heartbroken, and that was sort of the catalyst that made them realize that, they needed to take some personal inventory. That was that saying, okay, wait a minute, you know what? I didn't realize that there were so many things that I really needed to address. I didn't realize that there was so much healing that I needed to do until I got into this relationship, until it ended, and I'm brokenhearted, and I'm realizing that there are so many things that that just did not go the way that I expected, and there's some work that I need to do. So that tends to be a wake-up call for a lot of the women that I work with. So how did you go from this journey of, like you said, you were in the military, you were a firefighter, you're a minister. How did you, once you said, okay, I want to focus on relationships, like what did that look like?
Interestingly enough, you just talked about a lot of the clients that you have being on the verge or coming out of a breakup. And so for me, the interesting part is when I started speaking and doing the things that I did, relationships wasn't a part of what I wanted to do. So I had done my self-inventory and all that stuff, but still just never really wanted to do relationships. Now, I will say that what led me to doing my self-inventory was coming out of a relationship. Mm-hmm. That's what led me to do it. But as far as focusing on it, that didn't come until sometime later. I was asked to speak at an event. And it just so happened that someone that had heard me speak on a panel the year before knew someone who was getting an event, and they needed a male speaker, and they wanted the male speaker to talk about relationships. And so that forced me to draw from all of the wisdom, I guess you can say, from my self-inventory period. It forced me to draw from that wisdom, and then once I did that, I saw how successful it was. And even though it was very successful, I still had no intentions on doing it until a business associate of mine said, hey, I think you might want to think about focusing on this, because I was at this event and it went well, and I think it's something that you should consider talking about more and more in the future. And so I did it, and it's interesting that that's kind of how life works. We come through something and we get wisdom from what we've been through. And part of that is so that we can share it with other people. Albeit I didn't know that at the time that I would be sharing it with other people. But that's exactly what I share, the things I learned and the things that I was exposed to, having heard from other couples that I counseled and coached over the years. And that's essentially how I came to it.
Wow. So, I want to know, your personal inventory period. How long was that, and what did you learn about yourself?
Wow. Okay. So my period, I would say, I'm going to say it was probably, now when I say this period, I'm going to say where I was very focused, and I'm going to say it was about a year and a half. And so, like a lot of people, I had come to this place. I had come out of a relationship, and I had come to this place where I felt like I could see from a spiritual perspective, I could see the cage that I was living in. And I no longer wanted to live in that cage. And so it forced me to ask myself what kind of questions, like what kind of man was I? How did I get to this place? What kind of man did I want to be? What kind of legacy did I want to leave for those coming behind me, or those that I would have the privilege to reach and influence and impact? And so what I learned about myself was number one, that I saw subjectivity. And subjectivity basically means it's like being in a restaurant and you see two people at another table and they're conversing, and every now and then one of them looks at you. And if you struggle with subjectivity, when they look at you, you assume that they're talking about you.
Right.
When it has nothing to do with you. And so what I learned about myself is since I struggled with subjectivity, I had a tendency to make mountains out of molehills. And since I struggled with subjectivity, I was easily offended and often defensive. And so I carried that into every relationship I was in. I carried that into every relationship I was in. I also understood that I was very, very indecisive. I was very, very passive as a man. And now the backstory to that is though I grew up in a two-parent home with a father and mother, but specifically a father who showed me love, my father, though he showed me love, he didn't teach me how to be a man. And so I lost my mother at 18. And so I started to gravitate early on to older women because I had lost that mother figure early in my life. So I was looking to replace that in my dating relationship. So you have a man seeking a motherly figure, but was also not told how to be a man. And so it was frustrating to be with me from a female's perspective. I was frustrating to be with in those days because I wanted a motherly figure, but I didn't know how to be a man. And so this period kind of helped me understand that about myself and understand that I had holes. By the way, I love that, from whole to wholeness. And so it helped me to understand that these were holes that I had to deal with in order to move forward. So that 18 months was very focused and very intentional because I was essentially sick and tired of who I was.
I love everything that you just said, and I can relate on so many levels in that. For me, and my listeners know, when I talk about my story, my sort of, my personal inventory moment, my wake-up call for me was when I got fired from my job in social work. And I was extremely miserable. I was playing so small, and I was, instead of really helping people to heal and change their lives, I was simply helping people to maintain their dysfunction.
Wow.
And I got to a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. But I was not going to leave that job. I was feeling very trapped because I felt like I had worked so hard to get to this point. I got my bachelor's degree. I got my master's degree. I, just got married, and I, did all this work. I did everything that everybody told me to do, but I was miserable. And it was really when an answered prayer, I got fired from my job, I took that time. And for me, I took 6 months, and I said, who am I? Why am I here? What is the same thing? What is the legacy that I want to leave? What do I want to do with my life? What is the impact that I really want to make on the world, and how can I do that?
Right.
And so that was my time. I did that, and that was the catalyst for me starting Avalaura's Healing Center, and that was a little over 11 years ago. And,
wow.
So many wonderful things came out of that. And that's why now when I have clients who come to me in that space, I can relate to it because we all have that. You know, anybody who really wants to leave a legacy, who wants to make an impact, we all have that period in our lives. It can look different. So it can be a breakup. It can be a loss of a job. It can be an illness, you know, whatever it might be. But we all have that moment. And in that moment, we have a choice. You know, do we want to keep moving forward the way we've been going? Or do we want to make a change? Do we want to make that decision to really look at our lives and to, you know, really take personal responsibility for the things that we were doing wrong? So not blaming other people. I could have blamed my boss for firing me. It had nothing to do with him. I'm glad he fired me. I needed to get fired. I needed him to push me out because I was not going to leave.
I love it.
So I love that you took that space and you could see as a man really where you were not being the man that you wanted to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that, you know, so many women, you know, even need to hear that, because a lot of times they're dealing with men who are not the men that they need to be, but they're simply accepting it. Even though they're miserable, even though they're not getting their needs met, they're accepting it.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And so part of what I like to do is with the guys I mentor, another thing I learned is that crisis can be an asset, you know, depending on how you look at it, you know, because it forces you to look at things differently. You know, I jokingly say, like, if you have $20 in your pocket, right, and you know that $20 is all you have until you get paid in 2 weeks, you're gonna look at that $20 a little differently than you would if it was the first 20 you were taking out of your paycheck.
Ain't that
you're gonna look at it a little differently. And then I also came to know that you don't wait on defining moments, right? I tell guys all the time, don't wake up when she packs up, right?
Yeah.
So you can create defining moments instead of waiting for adversity to hit and then that being a defining moment. You can actually create them for yourself. You can actually create defining moments. And so, you know, with guys, I love to tell them all the time that you can choose what kind of man you want to be. You can choose what kind of man you want to be. It doesn't have to be predicated on what you've been through, and that's essentially part of a book that I have coming out. You know, definition of a man. You know, whatever defines you determines your destiny, and you can choose what defines you. You can choose it. It doesn't have to be your past or the wrong in your life. You can actually make a choice as to what defines you.
Wow. That is absolutely true. So let's talk about that. Like, what are some of the things that men and women can do to improve the quality of their relationships?
Well, I think you mentioned it a minute ago. You talked about dysfunction, right? And so I believe that a lot of us have dysfunction, areas of dysfunction within us. The issue comes into play when human beings are very resilient, right? We're resilient and we compensate all the time. And what happens that I found is we compensate for our dysfunction, and we continue to function. We continue to function with our dysfunction. So we're functioning, but we're functioning dysfunctionally. And over time, what happens is we forget that we're dysfunctional. We forget that. And so there's a need to identify and eliminate areas of dysfunction. I think that's where it starts. And I think beyond that, I'm a huge fan of developing core values. I'm a huge fan of that. And so, for instance, when I deal with guys, and this can go for women as well, when I deal with guys, I say you can decide what kind of man you want to be. You can make that decision. And so, for instance, you can decide that faithfulness is going to be a core value of yours, so that your faithfulness is not dependent upon whether or not your woman, your fiance, your wife is acting right. Because a lot of times we're reactionary in life instead of being proactive. And so when we develop core values for ourselves, we begin to dictate the course of how we do things instead of reacting to what happens to us in life. And so I think that's where it starts as it relates to being whole relationally.
I love that because, really what you're saying is that you don't have to choose to operate out of your dysfunction just because the other person in the relationship is not acting the way you want them to act, or you're not getting what you want to get.
Absolutely.
You can choose to have your own morals and values and act accordingly.
Yes.
And that is so powerful, because you're absolutely right that most people, and we're human beings. It's just how we're designed. Most people, we're very, if we don't have a plan for ourselves, if we don't have a vision for our life, we're really acting unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And when you act unconsciously, you're always acting out of your dysfunction.
I agree. Well said.
Because you're not taking that moment to assess and to look at, okay, what is it that I really want? And is this in alignment with what I want? You're simply just acting.
Yep.
And so just like you said, a man can choose the type of man that he wants to be. I'll say that for women, that a woman can choose the type of woman that she wants to be. And when you have both parties that do that, then you can have a relationship in wholeness and healing, because now you have two people who are really, more than the relationship, are about being the best person that they can possibly be, and the relationship becomes an extension of that.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love to say, give all of your relationships the gift of a better you.
I love that. I love that. So what are some of the problems that you see, people doing in their relationships that are really preventing them to having, to being the best them and having the best relationship?
Well, I think success relationally is almost, I think innately, most people are selfish, right? And so to have a healthy relationship is counterintuitive to being selfish. And so a lot of people, everything we do, most of the things we do relationally, we do it from a selfish standpoint. And so we lack empathy in our relationships, and we do everything from a what can I get instead of what can I give perspective. Like, for instance, communication is typically what is said to be a problem relationally. And so, from my opinion, what we can do in that regard is we can communicate with the intention of connecting. So for me, communicating with someone should always be about connecting with them. I mentioned seek to understand, not to be understood. Other people say, you should listen relationally, not to respond, but to actually hear what the other person is going through, and to hear or discern what their need is. So one thing we can do is we can communicate with the intention of connecting with someone. And then I would say number two, aside from dealing with our own dysfunction, is that we can learn to be better at how we resolve the issues that we find ourselves going through. Because no matter how much dysfunction you have or don't have in your relationships, things are going to come up. So the issue then becomes, how do we resolve the matters that we find ourselves in? How do we get through this? How do we get over it? How do we get around it in order to get to a more healthy relationship?
Very, very powerful. You're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that I always talking about in terms of listening. Because I tell people I listen for a living. That if you ask me what I get paid to do, I get paid to listen.
Yes,
I get paid to hear the things that you say and the things that you don't say.
Yes.
And far too often, most people, they're not listening. They are simply waiting to get their point across.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't actually hear what the other person is saying. They hear what they think the other person is saying. They hear what they've been told in the past. They hear hurt that has happened to them before that they never got over. And so they carry all of that. Just like you said, you carried all of that, that stuff into your relationship, losing your mother, not having a father that trained you how to be a man. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what you were carrying. So when you were listening, that's what you heard.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
And that's exactly, you're absolutely right. That is what we do. And all of us, we're all guilty of that. Even the most evolved person, we are all guilty of that on some level. And it takes that awareness and really in that consciousness to be in that space of, okay, let me sit down, let me listen to what you're saying, and now let me repeat back what I heard.
Right.
So that I can make sure that I heard you, and let me then decide what is it that I can do for you to add value to help you with what you just said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I live by that phrase, adding value. That should be your goal, to add value to whoever you're in a relationship with. I love to tell guys that I mentor all the time, learn to leave people better than you found them. Learn to leave them. So if that is your discipline, then when you're in a relationship, whether it works out or not, at the end of the day, your goal should be that she says she was better off because of having been in a relationship with you. So I love that. Totally agree.
That is powerful. Imagine how different relationships would be if we all had, we all thought that way.
Yes.
Woo.
Absolutely.
Wow. And,
Absolutely.
And it's so funny. I hear women saying that all the time that, Avalaura, I took care of this man. I fed him. I, made sure he had clothes and, I was there for him and everything. I made him a better man for the next woman.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And I always say, well, did you really? Or were you just his mama?
Enabling.
Right. Because that sounds like a mother, not a wife, not a girlfriend.
Yes, indeed. Wow.
So you're absolutely right. That is a beautiful, very selfless thought. And again, just going back to what you said originally, you can't get into that space if you haven't done your own personal inventory.
Right.
You simply can't. You can't think about how you can add value to somebody else, how you can help them to be better, whether they stay with you or whether they leave. You can't think that way if you haven't done your own personal work.
Yep.
Wow.
And this is why people like you are so important, because you take the time to empower and uplift and encourage women and people all over, and because people need that, because women are some of the most giving people on the planet, and they give, and my question is always, what are you giving to yourself? Like, what are you giving to yourself? And one of the first things I ask my clients all the time is, who's the most important person to you? And if I don't hear me, then I know we have an issue. Because you can't give what you don't have. And so many women are burnt out because they're giving relationally, and they're not giving to themselves, even to the point of evaluating whether this relationship is profitable, if you will, for me or not. One of the questions I get all the time from women is, how long should I stay in this relationship? How long? And I always reference something I heard A.R. Bernard say. He talks about something called measurable progress and reasonable time. Has there been measurable progress or value add to you in reasonable time? Now, of course, all of this is relative, but that's for the individual to decide. Okay, if you've been you've been in this relationship 6 months, 8 months, however long it's been, has there been measurable progress or growth or value add in that span of time? And then you make that decision based upon that. But if you're not first, if you don't have self-care and concern and self-love, and if you're not first, you'll continue to put up with foolishness or nonsense, if you will, enabling men instead of empowering them, then you're more apt to stay in a situation longer than you should.
Yeah, that is so very true. And what are some of the things that you find, particularly from a man, because one of the things that I see that is such a problem, even though again, a lot of my clients are women. I work with men too, but the majority of my clients are women, and they are coming to me for advice and help. And I definitely, just because of my training, my background, being married, all of that, I am definitely an objective party. But one of the things that I see women do, one of the mistakes that I see them make, is that they will go to their girlfriends, their sisters, their mamas, for advice about men, and their girlfriends, their sisters, their mamas, their best friends tend to think exactly like they do. So
that's true.
You talk about enabling and empowering their tribe. They're not empowering them. They're enabling them.
Yeah.
And, oh, yeah, girl, you're right. He shouldn't have done that. You should do this. All they're doing is mirroring back to you exactly what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are, I'm interested in your perspective as a male. Like, what are some of the things that you really see women doing wrong that they can correct, and, how they might be saying it, but then, men are saying it a little bit differently.
Yeah. I love that. One of the biggest things is men often feel like the woman they're with is trying to change them. And so one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to women is deal with him from where he is and not from where you are. So, in other words, you can make a choice. If this is the man in your life, you can make a choice to deal with him or love him because of his position and in spite of his disposition. So there's oftentimes a tendency from my experience and my exposure, there's often a tendency for women to, because they think they can, or their desire is to change the man, they try to put things in place to change him without really finding out where he is and what he wants and what areas in life he wants to change in. Now, part of this is our fault because we don't communicate the way we should. Mm-hmm. We don't communicate the way we should. But I like to believe that there is a way that your man, speaking to women, there is a way that your man communicates. It may be different from the way you communicate, but part of helping to facilitate the change is learning how he communicates, learning what things make him tick, what brings out his voice. There's certain things in men that bring out their voice, right? And so women oftentimes seek to change it in ways that don't bring out his voice. And so what I always encourage them to do is find out what brings out his voice and work from that angle. Because if you work from that angle, he feels like you're more a part of his world and his life, and then you gain access to him that you wouldn't otherwise get.
Wow. So, that really goes back to what we were talking about in the listening.
Yes, absolutely.
So listening to understand and not listening to change.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right.
Wow. That's powerful. Ladies, I really hope that you are getting this, that you are listening, that you are taking notes, and that you actually look at your own relationships, or if you're not in a relationship now, looking at your past relationships and do your own personal inventory and look at, what are some of the things that you did wrong and that you could do differently, and making sure that you're not continuing either to take that into your current relationship or that you don't take it into the next relationship. Because this is some powerful, powerful information. So I definitely hope that you take it and implement it, because that is always the goal. Not that you just hear it and you just say, and wow, and oh my goodness, and woo, good Lord, oh Jesus, whatever, and then you don't do anything with it.
Yes.
So, Rodney, this has been, wow. This has been awesome, great information. Is there any closing thoughts or anything that, you want to share that, that is just on your heart that you haven't already shared with us?
I probably would close with saying that, relationships are very powerful tools. However, most of us misuse the tool. Whether it's we are ignorant at how to be skillful with it, or we're lazy with the tool. Most of us misuse the powerful tool that is relationships. And so, for men and women, I think we would do well in first studying ourselves and then learning to study the person that we choose to be in a relationship with. Everybody's unique. Everybody has value and experience and things that they've been through that they bring to the table of the relationship. I think it's up to us to figure out what a person needs from us instead of what they can get to us. Relationally, people often see through their deepest need. Their deepest need is the lens by which they view the relationship. And that often comes out in how they act, what they say. And so I think we would do well with paying attention to one another, and noticing the distress signals that people send. Notice the cries for help. Notice the cries for attention that we send. And I think if we would just pay a little bit more attention to the person we're with, that will go a long way in making our relationships more healthy. And then after we pay attention, respond accordingly to what we hear and what we see. And I think our relationships that's a good starting point to making our relationships a lot more whole.
That's a good starting point, middle point, and ending point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things that you just said is so powerful, and I tell my clients this all the time, is that when you do your own personal work, when you truly get to know who you are, who you be, where you are in the world, what you want for yourself, when you do that work, when you go through that process, not only do you understand yourself better, but you understand people better.
Yes.
And that is the gift. You can't go back to relating to people the way you used to when you have a clear understanding, when you can look at somebody, like you said, the distress signals and things like that, and not see it that, oh, what's wrong with you, and I need to fix you, and why don't you just do this? But, okay, I don't like the way that you're behaving. I don't like what's happening, but I understand why you're doing it.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. So very powerful. Thank you so much. And how can our listeners, how can they find you? How can they contact you for more information? How can they get your book that's coming out?
Right now, the best way to reach me would be by email or social media. I'm currently having my website redone, but you can reach me on Facebook at Rodney Gray, and on Instagram, Twitter, and Periscope at Rodney_Gray, and the number 1. Gray is spelled Gray. So that's Rodney Gray on Facebook. Instagram, Twitter, and Periscope, Rodney_Gray, and the number 1. For anybody who wants to email me, my email address is REV as in Victor, RG as in George, RAY at yahoo.com. So that's RevRGray at yahoo.com. And thank you so much for this for this wonderful opportunity to share with you on your platform and the wonderful things that you're doing. It's truly an honor.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine and my listeners. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Avalaura Heals. We'll see you back next Sunday for a new show. Until then, wishing you peace, love, and bountiful blessings.
This episode of Avalaura Heal My Life is sponsored by Beads by Memimdi, which specializes in designing beautiful jewelry using authentic crystals. Crystals have been known and used for many years for their metaphysical properties, aiding individuals in achieving success, well-being, and spiritual growth and development. Order your beautiful crystal jewelry with a personalized touch today on Instagram at beads, BEADS _ by Memimdi, MIMINDIE.
Hey, beautiful. Thank you for listening to another edition of Avalaura Heal My Life podcast. Join me each and every week to move from whole to wholeness in your life, your relationships, your business, and your career. And if now is the time for you to embrace all that you are for your most incredible life, go ahead and email me today at avalaura@avalaura.com for your own personal consultation. And while you're at it, I'm Googleicious, so you can find more information about me online. Go to my website at avalaura.com and join my mailing list.